Keith Urban is on stage for his first show since Nicole Kidman filed for divorce.
After divorced, Keith Urban confesses the truth about Nicole Kidman. Breakups are messy, but when it's them, the couple everyone thought would make it to forever, it feels like the ground just cracked under Hollywood. Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman, the golden pair who wants to find love, fame, and loyalty, are no longer together. Yes, it's true. After their shocking separation, Keith finally broke his silence, revealing a confession that stripped away the glossy fairy tale the world believed in. So what really pushed this picture-perfect marriage to its breaking point? What could make a man walk away from Nicole Kidman herself? Let's unravel the truth behind this stunning Hollywood split, the end of an era no one saw coming. When the news broke on September 30th that Nicole Kidman had officially filed for divorce, Hollywood practically stopped breathing. Fans were stunned, but the real shock came when Keith Urban spoke up, not with a PR-approved statement or some polished apology, but with a confession that cut straight through the noise. "I blew it to smithereens." That one line changed everything. For years, they were the couple people pointed to and said, "See? It's possible." A global movie star and a country singer making love and fame coexist. It was the dream. But behind the smiles and red carpets, something fragile was cracking. And Keith's words didn't come from nowhere. Looking back, the signs were there. Remember that 2024 AFI tribute where he got emotional, thanking Nicole for rescuing him during his lowest moments? Back then, it sounded romantic. Now it feels like a quiet cry for help, a man already admitting he'd leaned too hard on the woman who kept him standing. What made his confession so gut-punching wasn't just what he said, but how he said it. No team, no lawyer, no spin. Just Keith, stripped of all the charm, speaking like a man who couldn't fake it anymore. And the timing? Brutal. Nicole's divorce papers were already filed. Rumors were swirling. Missed red carpets, awkward interviews, whispers of another woman. But Keith's raw honesty sliced through it all. He didn't blame her. He didn't hide. He just said the truth. He blew it. And for once, Hollywood saw something real. Pain, regret, and a man finally owning the part he played in losing the woman everyone thought he'd never let go. They say every Hollywood breakup has two sides, the official story and the one whispered behind closed doors. When Keith Urban finally admitted he had blown his marriage to Nicole Kidman, the internet lit up. Some called it brave, others rolled their eyes, saying it was years too late for honesty. But for many fans, it just felt sad. If they couldn't make it, what hope did any couple in Hollywood really have? For Nicole, though, that confession had to cut deep. She'd stood by him through rehab, career dips, and endless rumors, fighting to keep their family together while the world watched. So hearing him admit it out loud wasn't exactly a surprise, but it made the heartbreak official. Still, Keith's words raised more questions than they answered. Because in Hollywood, admitting it's over isn't the hard part. It's admitting why. And that's where things start to twist. Rumors began swirling almost instantly. Whispers of another woman, a young guitarist on Keith's tour, 25-year-old Maggie Baugh. Fans noticed things, the way he looked at her on stage, the way he changed the lyrics of The Fighter to include her name. Clips went viral, TikTok went wild. And just like that, the internet decided it had cracked the case. Was it true? Or just another Hollywood story spun out of fragments and fan theories? Even Maggie's dad added fuel to the fire with a comment that wasn't exactly a denial. One thing's for sure, this breakup wasn't just about love lost. It was about the story that followed and how sometimes the truth gets drowned out by the noise. And just like that, what started as innocent stage banter suddenly felt like the spark of something scandalous. Fans didn't need confirmation, they could feel the tension. Still, here's the catch. No one's actually said a word. Not Keith, not Maggie, and certainly not Nicole. Her silence, though, spoke volumes. Because when someone like Nicole Kidman goes quiet, people start connecting the dots themselves. The timing only made it worse. On September 30th, she officially filed for divorce, ending a 19-year marriage that once defined Hollywood romance. Her reason? Irreconcilable differences. But insiders whispered that Keith had already moved out months before, quietly starting a new chapter on his own. To those who'd seen him up close, it wasn't shocking. It was heartbreaking, but inevitable. Yet, the whispers about another woman, that's what really stung. Friends say Nicole felt blindsided, even betrayed. After all, she'd stood by him through rehab, career struggles, and personal storms. And now, as the world speculates about who or what came between them, one question lingers. Was the writing on the wall all along? It started like gossip, a few whispers, a few raised eyebrows. But soon, even fans couldn't ignore the pattern forming. Keith's confession about blowing the marriage, Nicole's sudden divorce filing, the chatter about Maggie, and the eerily perfect timing of it all. Coincidence? Maybe, but it felt heavier than that, like Keith was already carrying the weight of something the rest of us were just beginning to piece together. And here's the twist most people miss. The other woman doesn't always wear heels and lipstick. Sometimes she looks like a career. Sometimes she sounds like fame. Or worse, she hides in the quiet corners of old addictions that never really let go. For Keith, the endless tours, the spotlight's pressure, and his long battle with substance abuse might have been that unseen mistress. Literal or not, the whispers shattered the glossy fairy tale image of a couple who once seemed untouchable. So that begs the question, when did the cracks begin? For nearly 2 decades, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman were Hollywood royalty. She was the Oscar-winning actress. He was the country music golden boy. Together, they were the power couple, the kind that made people believe love could actually survive fame. But what shines under flashbulbs doesn't always survive behind closed doors. Those cracks didn't appear overnight. They crept in quietly, like hairline fractures in glass, almost invisible at first, then suddenly impossible to ignore. Keith was always on the road, chasing music and miles. Nicole was wrapped up in scripts, premieres, and red carpets. Add in 2 daughters into that chaos, and their perfect life started to look more like 2 worlds struggling to collide. It started with little things, the kind that don't make headlines but quietly chip away at something beautiful. Insiders later admitted those so-called fixes were never real solutions, just band-aids over deeper cracks. The distance between Keith and Nicole wasn't just about being in different cities, it was emotional. And fans, they noticed. Nicole showing up alone at red carpets, Keith attending events solo. The interviews that once overflowed with affection suddenly felt empty. At first, no one wanted to believe it. They're just busy, people said. Every couple has off days. But in hindsight, the signs were loud and clear. Then came the silence, and silence in their case said everything. No more loving shout-outs, no more playful banter, just an eerie absence that spoke volumes. So when Keith finally admitted he had blown the marriage, it didn't feel like a shock. It felt like confirmation. The curtain lifted, and everyone could finally see what had been brewing beneath the perfect image. His confession wasn't scandal, it was surrender. He was simply admitting what fans had already started to piece together. The fairy tale had cracks. And then, of course, came the whispers. The other woman. Whether it was true or not almost didn't matter. The timing made it hurt more. For Nicole, those close to her said it felt like betrayal, salt on an already open wound. The irony, the very things that made them so iconic, his music, her movies, were the same forces pulling them apart. For years, they somehow balanced it all, until they couldn't. The scale tipped and love got stretched too thin. Friends saw it coming long before the headlines. Keith quietly moving into his own place wasn't a rumor. It was the goodbye they hadn't said out loud. When the divorce finally hit, insiders didn't gasp. Only the fans did. Because for everyone watching, it wasn't just the end of a marriage, It was the heartbreak of realizing that even the love stories we hold up as proof of forever can still fall apart. If they couldn't make it, who can? That's the question echoing across Hollywood right now. But before we drown in heartbreak and what went wrong, let's rewind. Because before the tears, before the rumors, and before Keith's now infamous "I blew it" confession, there was magic. The kind of story that made even the most cynical hearts believe in love again. The romance everyone rooted for. It started in 2005 at a glitzy event in Los Angeles, celebrating Australians. Nicole Kidman, newly single and slowly rebuilding after her split from Tom Cruise, walked in looking radiant. Keith Urban, the charming country star with a shy grin and a guitar in hand, was there too. One glance, one smile, and boom, sparks flew. But here's the twist. While Nicole was instantly smitten, I thought he was dreamy, she later admitted. Keith didn't call. Not for 3 months. 3 whole months! Imagine having Nicole Kidman's number and just sitting on it. Bold move, Keith. When he finally did pick up the phone, though, it was all over. Their conversations weren't surface-level chatter. They were soul-deep, hours-long talks that felt like two people finding home in each other's voices. And just like that, their love story took off. By June 2006, they were saying "I do" in Sydney. Nicole glowing in a Balenciaga gown, Keith serenading her like something out of a dream. It wasn't just another Hollywood fairy tale. It felt real. Nicole said Keith made her feel safe. Keith called Nicole his savior, crediting her with helping him survive his darkest battles with addiction. That wasn't just love, it was devotion. The kind that made everyone believe theirs would be the story that lasted forever. If Hollywood ever needed proof that true love could survive the spotlight, Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman were the poster couple. They weren't just beautiful together, they believed in each other, and the world believed right along with them. Red carpets? Always hand in hand. Interviews? Pure devotion. Keith wrote songs that fans swore were love letters to Nicole, and together they built a picture-perfect family with their daughters Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. They made it look effortless. Two souls defying the odds of fame, rehab, and relentless paparazzi. But here's the thing about fairy tales. When they crack, they don't just break quietly, they shatter. And that's exactly what makes their story sting now. Because when the couple everyone looked up to starts falling apart, it doesn't just feel like gossip. It feels like the end of something we all wanted to believe in. Still, before the heartbreak and headlines, there were years that worked. The laughter, the love, the quiet moments that built what once felt unshakable. So how did it all start slipping away? To understand that, we've got to rewind, back to the middle years, the everyday rhythm of their marriage, and the subtle shifts that would one day change everything. 19 years together in the spotlight. If anyone knew the tightrope walk between love and fame, it was Nicole Kidman. By the time Keith entered her life, she'd already weathered the storm of her marriage to Tom Cruise and the public heartbreak that followed. She wasn't chasing fairy tales anymore. She was chasing peace. And in Keith, she thought she'd finally found it. She called him her rock, her calm, her safe place in a world that never stopped spinning. He called her his muse, the love he'd waited his whole life to find. And for nearly 2 decades, it seemed like they'd beaten the odds. Until slowly, the cracks began to show. For years, it looked like they'd done the impossible, cracked the secret to a Hollywood marriage that actually worked. Genuine affection, red carpet glam, and a love story that felt refreshingly real. Nicole Kidman often said all she wanted was something lasting, a sense of stability in a world that never stopped spinning. And with Keith Urban by her side,
It seemed she'd finally found it. When their daughters Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret arrived, the picture looked perfect. Love, family, and success, all neatly tied together. But behind the cameras, things weren't quite so picture perfect. Because in Hollywood, marriage isn't just about love. It's about timing, distance, and the brutal logistics of fame. Nicole's life ran on movie schedules, not calendars. One week she was filming in Australia, the next she was on a press tour in Europe, then right back in the US for another project. Keith's tours weren't any easier. Different cities, different time zones, different worlds. Two people, one marriage, and barely any overlap. Insiders say Nicole tried, really tried to make it work. She brought the kids along on set, moved around her press events, and even scaled back projects to be present. But sometimes, even love can't stretch far enough. And in their case, the gap only grew wider. Then came the pressure, the endless interviews, glossy covers, and fan expectations. They weren't just Nicole and Keith anymore. They were Nicole and Keith, Hollywood's hope that love could survive fame. And that's a heavy crown to wear when things behind the scenes are falling apart.
So when Keith later confessed he had blown the marriage, it hit hard. For Nicole, it wasn't just the loss of a husband, it was the collapse of a dream she'd fought to hold together. And the whispers of someone else only made the heartbreak sting even more. For Nicole Kidman, it wasn't just a breakup, it was a gut punch. Whether or not another woman was part of the story, it felt like betrayal. After years of fighting for stability, of trying to build something real in a world built on illusion, the rug had been ripped out from under her. But if there's one thing about Nicole, it's that she doesn't stay down for long. She's been here before. Heartbreak, loss, reinvention, it's practically the rhythm of her life. And maybe that's why fans love her so fiercely. Because Nicole Kidman isn't just a Hollywood name. She's a survivor in heels and red lipstick, the woman who keeps walking forward even when the world watches her stumble. But to understand the strength she's showing now, you have to go back. Long before Keith Urban, long before the tabloids and the country love songs. Because Nicole's story didn't begin with him. It began with Tom Cruise. Before Keith ever strummed his way into her life, Nicole had already lived through a love story that could fill a dozen Hollywood scripts, complete with passion, fame, heartbreak, and rebirth. She met Tom Cruise in 1989 on the set of Days of Thunder, and together they became the ultimate 90s power couple. Red carpets, magazine covers, blockbuster hits. To the outside world, it was a dream. Behind the scenes, not so much. Their marriage, while picture perfect on camera, was turbulent in reality. They adopted 2 children, Isabella and Connor, but by 2001, the fairy tale had cracked. Their divorce was messy, public, and painful, leaving a 33-year-old Nicole suddenly single, forced to rebuild herself in front of the world. Later, she'd admit she'd lost herself in that marriage. She once said, "I got married too young," reflecting on how the split pushed her to rediscover who she really was. And that rediscovery, painful as it was, shaped the woman who would one day meet Keith Urban. Professionally, though, she was unstoppable. The early 2000s marked her true ascent. With The Hours 2002, she claimed her Oscar and her identity. No longer Tom Cruise's wife, but Nicole Kidman, powerhouse actress. Roles in Moulin Rouge, The Others, and Cold Mountain proved her range, her grit, and her staying power. Before love, there was loss. Before stability, there was struggle. And before Keith, there was the making of Nicole Kidman, the woman who learned that even in heartbreak, there's power. She had the fame, the fortune, and the flawless red carpet smile. But behind all that sparkle, Nicole Kidman often spoke about something far less glamorous: loneliness. She craved something real, a family, a love that didn't fade when the camera stopped flashing. So when Keith Urban came along, it wasn't just another celebrity romance. It felt like a second chance at the kind of steady, soul-deep connection she'd been yearning for. And maybe that's why their love story hit fans so hard. It wasn't just a country star falling for a Hollywood queen. It was Nicole,
the woman who had survived heartbreak, divorce, and the brutal glare of fame, finally finding someone who seemed to calm her storm. Looking back now, that makes everything even more bittersweet. Because for someone who's already had to rebuild once, you can't help but ask, how many times can one heart start over? The weight of fame. Part of what made Nicole and Keith so captivating was how perfectly their worlds collided. She was Hollywood royalty, statuesque, sophisticated, an Oscar winner who defined elegance. He was Nashville's golden boy, the laid-back musician with a guitar and a grin that melted hearts. Together, they became the ultimate crossover couple, a fusion of red carpets and rhinestones, of movie premieres and country tours. By the early 2000s, Nicole had already conquered Hollywood. From Moulin Rouge to The Hours, she'd proven she wasn't just another actress, she was the actress, the kind who took bold risks and won big because of it. Meanwhile, Keith was carving out his own empire across the globe. Leaving Australia to chase his dreams in Nashville, he hustled through smoky bars and endless rejections until the hits came. Somebody Like You and You'll Think of Me, songs that turned him into one of country music's most magnetic stars. Two dreamers, two different worlds, colliding in a love story that seemed destined to last, until it didn't. By the time Keith Urban crossed paths with Nicole Kidman in 2005, he was already living every musician's dream. Sold-out arenas, armfuls of awards, and a fan base that couldn't get enough of his rugged charm. Then came Nicole, Hollywood royalty with poise, grace, and that movie star glow. Put them together, and it felt like destiny had written a power couple into existence. Fireworks? Absolutely. But here's the twist. Sometimes the brightest sparks burn out the fastest. They looked unbeatable, like love itself had found its A-list poster couple. Keith brought the grounded country soul, Nicole the silver screen magic. Together, they were perfection, or so it seemed. But fame has a way of testing even the strongest foundations. On one hand, it handed them a life people only fantasize about. On the other, it demanded a price, time, peace, and the simple rhythm of ordinary love. Keith was constantly on the road, city to city, stage to stage, living from suitcases and spotlight haze. Nicole's world spun just as fast. Long shoots, international press tours, and film sets oceans away. Their love wasn't failing, it was just fighting for air. Insiders called it parallel lives, two people deeply in love, yet always passing each other on the highway of ambition. Sure, they made it look romantic, surprise visits, private jets for a few hours together, red carpet reunions that melted hearts. Sweet, no doubt, but sustainable? Not even close. And then came the glare of fame, the endless scrutiny that turns tiny cracks into headlines. A missed event, a solo red carpet, a strained smile in an interview. Suddenly, whispers began. Everyone wanted them to stay perfect. But perfection is a heavy crown to wear. In the end, it's almost poetic. The same passion that made them magnetic, the drive to create, to perform, to shine, was the very force quietly pulling them apart. Two stars, both chasing dreams, not realizing that in the process, they were drifting farther from each other's orbit. Looking back, it's almost poetic. Their careers weren't just part of their story, they were like a third person in the marriage. Always there, always influencing, sometimes pulling them closer, sometimes quietly pushing them apart. Fame gave them everything, and took just as much. A new chapter begins. The ink on the divorce papers might be dry, but let's be real, this story is far from over. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's next chapter is already unfolding, and if history is any clue, the world will be watching just as closely as they did during the love story. For Nicole, the path forward is crystal clear. Her daughters come first. Friends say she'd been dreading the day the separation went public, but once it did, something shifted. She's surprisingly level-headed, one insider revealed. Instead of clinging to the past, she's focusing on what matters most: Sunday Rose, Faith Margaret, and keeping their world steady. That doesn't mean it's easy. Divorce is messy, even without cameras and tabloids dissecting every move. But Nicole is no stranger to heartbreak under the spotlight, and this time she's meeting it with quiet strength. No drama, no bitterness, just resilience. She's already turning the page, diving into new film projects, spending time with her girls, and rebuilding the sense of home that fame often shakes apart. Meanwhile, Keith's post-divorce story has its own twist, one that's all about the money and a promise. When they married back in 2006, their prenup had an unusual clause: $600,000 for every year Keith stayed sober. For a man who's spoken openly about his struggles with addiction, it wasn't just a legal term, it was a pledge, a form of accountability wrapped in love. And here's the jaw-dropper. Keith has reportedly been sober ever since that early stint in rehab, not long after they wed. Do the math, and that's around $11 million. A strange, almost symbolic detail in a story that's always blurred the line between romance and reality, love and responsibility. Because in the end, maybe that's what their marriage was all along. Two people trying to balance heart and history, fame and family, and learning, sometimes painfully, that even the brightest love can have shadows. It started with an intervention and ended with a clause about sobriety. That full-circle irony isn't lost on anyone who's followed Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's story. Early in their relationship, Nicole once staged an intervention that Keith later said didn't just save his career, it saved his life. Everything was just designed, I believe, for that moment to fuse us together, he told Oprah back in 2010. Now, years later, they find themselves on opposite sides of a marriage that once felt unbreakable. But if there's one thing Keith has always done well, it's turn pain into art. With his guitar in hand and a world of emotion to unpack, fans are already wondering if his next album will carry the echoes of heartbreak, just like his earlier songs, born from raw, personal moments. For Nicole and Keith, the spotlight might dim on their marriage, but it won't on their shared role as parents. They've both made it clear that their daughters come first. No messy social media wars, no public feuds. Just two people determined to do right by their kids. Their marriage was never just red carpets and love songs. It was 20 years of fighting for balance between fame and family, love and self-preservation. And while their fairy tale didn't last forever, their story still stands as one of resilience, redemption, and reality. Because at the end of the day, even Hollywood's perfect couple is made up of two imperfect humans trying to figure it all out, first together and now apart. Their journey might have split in two, but the fascination with Nicole and Keith isn't fading anytime soon. If anything, this next chapter, the one where they rebuild separately, might be the most revealing yet.